Hey, I'm MauLer, and before I say anything, I'd like to point out that you just clicked a video called Amnesia, the Dark Descent versus A Machine for Pigs. So expect major spoilers for both games. In fact, go play them! Go play these games before you hear what I have to say. They're both really good. But which is better? Oh, I should probably mention that the reason I'm doing this, I freaking love the horror genre, and when it's done right, I love horror games. The Dark Descent changed everything for me in terms of how well it created such a rich and intense atmospheric experience, and because of this, I anticipate A Machine for Pigs more than nearly all games of 2013. Yeah, I don't care about GTA 5. I should also mention that this is my first review, and as such will be filled with problems that I'll iron out as much as I can. And, you know, if there's something weird going on, then let's just call it a style for now. Okay, so for this review, comparison, whatchamajigger, I don't know. I'm gonna try and sum up both games with some history first. Let's see what my recycled Wikipedia notes have to say. Amnesia was created by Frictional Games. Frictional Games is an independent video games company located in Helsingborg, Sweden. The company originally started with 5 members and has since grown considering the success of Dark Descent. They also provided a lovely developers mode commentary in the game that I'll be referencing throughout, so when something like this happens...
Hi, my name is Thomas Grip, and I'm one of the co-founders of Frictional Games.
You'll know what's going on. The company's first commercially released video game was Penumbra Overture, which gained a sequel and an expansion. Following that success and continuing its themes, Amnesia: The Dark Descent was born. The Dark Descent had a bumpy production and was relatively rushed to release, but it was one of the most impressive horror games of the time, and holds up to this day as one of, if not the best game of its genre. Following the success of Dark Descent, A Machine for Pigs was announced and subsequently released a mere 3 years later. But MauLer, all of this stuff is obvious. Fuck you. So Machine for Pigs wasn't entirely created by Frictional Games. It would seem that it was sort of handed off to the Chinese room. Frictional are busy with another game that we shall get to. So they passed over the majority of the development to the Chinese room, who are famous for creating this... movie. I mean game. Dear Esther. Oh. Apparently it did pretty good, so I guess it's a good game because people think it's a good game because I guess people like movies and movies when games don't have movies and the games are movies. So the Chinese room was obviously an excellent choice to be able to create a sequel to a game that broke new ground, combining gameplay and horror, considering their last game focused heavily on no gameplay and light horror. Yeah, well at least Dear Esther is pretty. So is this even a review? Fuck off. I've checked out some other reviews. People like Super Bunny Hop gave me some interesting insight, and some others gave me, I don't know, encouragement to make this video, I guess. I mean, I'm new to this, so I'd like to think I want to make my own mark on this sort of reviewing business, and the core of this is dissecting the entirety of the two games, while remaining objective when I make statements implied as facts. Like, for example, this game is too dark. Why? Because I can't see, as opposed to this game is bad because I don't like it. You know? Like, I see a lot of reviewers making the latter mistake, and it really grinds my gears when researching what was needed for this game. For example, no offense here, Vision 3, but when you say stuff like this...
Yes, there are pigs, and yes, they are scary pigs, but how scary are they, and are there enough of these scary pigs? These are the questions that I find myself asking after I finish the game.
Really? You didn't ask yourself, I don't know, what the fuck just happened? Who the hell is Oswald? And what the fuck did the machine do? Nope, you just asked yourself.
How scary are they, and are there enough of these scary pigs?
And then you get stuff like this.
Any decrease in tension is immediately made up for with a setting far creepier than anything in the previous game.
Oh cool, so this game is creepier than the first one? Why? Because of the effect it has on you, or the effect it has in general? Or was it the way it was constructed? Nah, fuck that, let's just say other stuff like they do. Ghostbusters is a far more adventurous film than Back to the Future. And The Departed is far scarier than Hellraiser. Isn't it fun when you just don't explain what you mean and you don't even say why you think these facts? Especially when they make claims that you can just debunk in seconds, or at least provide a strong counter-argument.
A Machine for Pigs offers a decidedly less frightening experience than its predecessor, but one that's equally as captivating and infinitely more disturbing.
Oh, it is? Is it? Dark Descent is less disturbing? Right, okay then. Thanks for clearing that up. Can I offer a counter to it though? That's disturbing. That's kinda funny. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't be so harsh to these reviewers. After all, I will be scrutinized after a quick glance at my own script. In any case, I'll reference a bunch of them at random points, but everything including dev commentary, third-party reviews, trailer clips, game clips, and the rest will be in a big ol' bibliography below.
How scary are they? And are there enough of these scary pigs? How scary are they? And are there enough of these scary pigs? Pigs.
So the boring bits are out of the way, onto the actual point of this video. When it comes down to it, how does one effectively compare two big-ass games? I guess you should find all the things both games have, you know, together, and then compare them individually, and then stack up the things that are exclusive, and make a sort of overall judgment. That's, you know, what's very important is that we try and remain objective when we give judgments and conclusions. I'll try and avoid being too personal, but no promises. So I think the main things that I can compare and contrast in these two games would be story, characters, graphics, sound, gameplay, and atmosphere. I mean, I could probably go further than that, or I could probably bring some of these into one section. But, you know, this is my thing. This is kind of how I want to do it. In addition,
hello everybody!
I'll be using snippets of gameplay from Markiplier's Let's Play of Machine for Pigs to further prove my points. That way you'll know that I didn't stage moments in the games to prove them. And I mean, you know, I'm using it for reviewing purposes, so it should be okay. I'll even leave a link to his Let's Play since it's worth a watch. He provides a lot of insight into the experience, and he has a lot of fun while playing it, so it's definitely worth it. I would have used other Let's Players as well, but I got the footage and reactions I needed from Markiplier, and, well...
The sick, the filthy. Ask them to define your
Chuff, chuff! Chuff, chuff, chuff! Chuff, chuff! Okay.
One of the key things I need you to remember, dear audience, is that Machine for Pigs and The Dark Descent are video games and shall be judged, dissected, and scrutinized as such. Think about it before you try and tell me to appreciate these games as something other than games. Okay? Storytelling is relatively simple. Provide a convincing universe, real characters, and some dramatic situations for them, and bam! A story can write itself. Well, sometimes. The deal with gaming is that more and more companies want to push credible, action-packed stories without remembering what makes games games. They sacrifice gameplay for the movie feel. This attitude is horrible. Remember a time when all we had was gameplay, where we barely even had graphics? It meant that we had no choice but to have excellent gameplay. But don't get me wrong, I more than welcome a good story in addition to gameplay. Just look at Bioshock 1. This game is chock full of incredibly fun gameplay mechanics you can mix and match to effectively reach your objectives throughout the whole campaign, while being fed such an immense story and world. It's a perfect balance, and it really shows what can be done when you apply gameplay to a story-driven game correctly. And sometimes, we get to see what happens when you apply it incorrectly. But that's for another time. The reason I'm saying this right now is that one of the games has fallen prey to such an issue. So I'm going to quickly sum up both of these fabulous stories. You are Daniel, an archaeologist of sorts. One of your many expeditions with your good friend Professor Herbert, you discovered an orb in some temple or something. And so returning home, you realize that something's following you. A shadow, if you will. Killing all those who've crossed in your path. Eventually you're offered solace and safety from a most unlikely source. Alexander the Baron.
Alexander, the Baron, is a peculiar but gracious man. He seems well versed in worldly matters, and is not at all as eccentric as I assumed.
Who knows more than his fair share about the orb and what follows it. Alexander explains his function as Baron and shows Daniel the entire castle, room by room, piece by piece.
Come, bring the lamp. You've been to the refinery, have you not?
I don't believe I have. Is it connected to the... what did you call it?
The inner sanctum.
And through the days, Alexander grooms Daniel into accepting some responsibilities. You see, in order to repel and deviate the shadow, you must feed it blood from others. But the men Alexander wants Daniel to kill are evil. Evil men who deserve punishment. And as time goes on, to prevent the shadow from reaching him, Daniel starts to kill those who may or may not be evil.
Paint the man, cut the lines. Paint the man, cut the lines. Please, the man cries. How you sleep.
When several warding rituals fail, Daniel becomes desperate, claiming to do anything to prevent the shadow from reaching him, which is just what Alexander wanted. Once Daniel has used items such as the Iron Maiden and the Wheel, he realizes that he became the man that he was punishing this whole time. Unable to deal with the stress and guilt, he drinks the memory-destroying Amnesia potion. This allows him to think with a clear mind and attack Alexander directly without crippling fear, regret, and anxiety. But you and Daniel need to decide what to do about all this for yourselves. Read the diaries, traverse the castle, kill or free Alexander forever. And that's where the game begins. You are Mandus, a butcher of sorts. Your wife and love dies, giving birth to your 2 sons just in time to see your business failing. In an attempt to rectify this, he visits a temple in Mexico and discovers an orb, and through it sees visions of the coming war, and the horrors his sons face, combined with the fugue state brought on by his illness. He decides it's time to change everything. When he returned to London, he began work on his machine using the money from his inheritance. He imports pigs and the temple he discovered stone by stone while feeding his servants and his friends into the machine, for who is really innocent in this world? Once the temple was completed, Mandus' first act was to sacrifice his sons, convinced he could use his great-uncle Alexander's research to bring them back to life. However, the realization and weight of his sons' deaths, the deaths of so many innocents, and the entire ordeal itself started to tear him apart. The orb recognized this and split him into 2, so that his work continued. The guilt-ridden Mandus is the one who wakens at the beginning of the game, and the aberrations of his children are the result of his remaining fever. Since the orb could only use Mandus when he was alive, he sacrifices himself in order to free the souls of his sons, and free London of his own tyranny. Now, how gripping are these stories? How interesting on a scale of 1 to 10? No, I'm not going to do it like that, that would be silly. So, okay, let's look at this like adults. These stories are ridiculously unrealistic. However, they remain in our universe and apply new ideas and information on top of it. Machine for Pigs would be the one closer to reality, as it uses faux science instead of fantasy magic to explain some of the things that are happening. Stories that are closer to home tend to be creepier. It's about how you relate to the person or the struggles of the person on screen. And these two are similar. In fact, there are small references connecting them as well. Anyway, I want to talk about how these stories are told. Amnesia: The Dark Descent is literally a blank slate. You're expected to know nothing, and you build your understanding piece by piece. Similar to the movie Prestige, you are told how you got to the start while being told what happens next, so by the time you get the finale, the finished story, you catch up to where you were at the beginning. And it makes for a giant full circle that seems really satisfying and brings a lot of different things together. Also, Prestige is amazing. Amnesia: Machine for Pigs has a similar approach, but convolutes and blurs information to the point where it's mostly subjective to even understand the story provided. And don't say this is a great storytelling format for some. This is my video, and I refuse to believe those paint sniffers exist. So this goes my way. This is dull, cheap, and insulting in my humble opinion. But why? Machine for the purposes of this video, it will be called Pigs. Pigs has you sifting through reams and reams of text, trying to figure out the story or the messages that are being conveyed other than the obvious ones like killing children is bad, while working very hard to confuse the fuck out of you with language that's needlessly convoluted. What really bugs me is that Mandus doesn't speak anything near like the way he writes in his diary when compared to the Professor interviews, which implies they toned down the language for the voice actors. And you know what? I love the snippets of interviews with the Professor. They were fantastic, but I'll get to that later. I want to make sure my audience, be it one guy or maybe 2, understand what I mean by convoluted. Here are some diary excerpts taken directly from the game. But then, what if they could stand upright and walk as men? What if the brute were harnessed thus? Would they sing? Would they find their own god? I mean, fine. I'm assuming this quote is saying, you know, how close are the pigs to man or something, since the entire game batters you at this point from start to finish. It's so strange and so unnecessary. Mandus only talks this way when the game requires it. Anyone who says it's because of his fever, well, he had the fever while he was talking to the Professor, so don't even go there. I mean, check out how he talks to the Professor.
These men, Professor, these so-called men of vision, they would shackle the masses to a wheel and turn it till their backs break. All for that opiate, the lure of profit. These fools who lackey them, these priests, these officials, this government, they make pigs of us all.
Look at that, he's a fucking normal person. Anyway, next one. In my dreams, I see a man, dressed in jaguar skins and feathered like a blooded saint. What came from the heart lubricated us. It crushed evil under its tread and liberated us all. Come on, this could mean like 1 million different things. And how about this gem? I stand and look at myself in the mirror. Penis in hand, and my reflection grins at me, and his mouth is full of sulfur mustards. See? See, kids? This is why you don't read diaries. I mean, what the fuck is that? Should we compare to a random note from Amnesia the Dark Descent?
12th of August, 1839. Banishment ritual is taking longer than expected, and we have to do what is needed. I spend my time helping out the prisoners. Being around these degenerates makes me ill. None of them even tries to face their punishment with any kind of dignity. They taunt me with their lies of innocence and their cowardly pleas of mercy.
And back to piggies.
If you are evil, at least yours is an honest evil, and that alone makes you Ubermensch. And thus I wash my hands and take my bed. What? What? Like so much of this game, it's just so much what?
You can make the argument that the pigs ones are out of context, but what the fuck is the context that fixes those? You know exactly why they were created, to just really blur everything. Because all of this is just an example of how you can take a simple story, one like I want to kill everyone, and completely convert it into this profound and complicated message. I mean, ultimately what I'm trying to say here is that this story would be better if they just told it properly. Because most people, when they complete this game, myself included, have no idea what the hell happened. You ask yourself, what did I miss? What did the machine do? Who did what? And why? You just complete the game and you're like, well, that's it.
But it seemed more of a side thing because they never really explained what the machine did. What did it do? I don't know. No one ever knows because they were just pulling in people from the streets, feeding into the machine, I'm assuming to get Vitae to do something. But what it was, I do not know.
I mean, one of the big problems is when you look back on what happened in this game, and you can literally sum it up as, I broke a machine, but then I fixed the machine, but then I broke the machine, and then I died. That was exciting. Compare that to the Dark Descent, where the worst thing you'll hear is, oh, okay, so he died, I guess. And the problem is, when you start to juggle and jumble all the information, eventually, things won't make any sense anymore.
Mandus, I know you are out here. I own this city. I am this city.
How? Why?
This is not what I meant. This is not what I meant at all.
How? How are you doing this? You're just a machine! Uh-oh. This doesn't seem good. What the hell is going on here? This doesn't make any sense.
And then you come to this finale that's completely underwhelming. What do I mean by underwhelming? Well, you go through the game asking all of these different questions like, hey, what are the pigs? Where did they come from? Who's the guy on the phone? Where did he come from and what is he doing? What am I doing? Who am I? Where are my kids? I mean, despite the fact that you don't care about the kids, you have to care about the kids because Mandus cares about the kids. That's the kind of... you get it. But you come to the end, and the game literally just tells you, hey, this guy on the phone, he was evil, and now he's dead. And you're dead. And everyone's okay. Thanks for playing. War's bad. Now let's get a direct comparison to Dark Descent, where there is ultimate satisfaction. Your questions are all answered. How did you get there? Why are you there? What was chasing you? How did it get to the point where it was chasing you? All the characters that were mentioned have endings. All of the plot points that were mentioned have endings. Everything that was a question is answered. Now, whether or not it's overwhelming, underwhelming, or middlewhelming, the ending is there. It's solid, it makes sense, and you know what? A lot of people said they were unsatisfied, and that the ending, compared to the entire game, is a bit of a letdown. Who knows, that may be the case. I mean, it's really up to the person. I was quite happy with it, personally. I thought that it was a decent ending to a game, especially considering that you have multiple choice. You really do decide on what you want to do based on the information you're given, because Alexander, well, that'll be saved for character. But the point here is that the story is solid.
A Machine for Pigs makes Mandus' narrative arc a fantastic trip that culminates in one of the most satisfying final acts of 2013.
Most satisfying, was it, IGN? Must have been a slow year then. Considering that the story in full, but simplified, is Mandus finds an orb, gains a fever while doing so, turns him insane, puts him on the path to starting up the industrial age and killing everyone so that they won't die in World War I.
So you see, we have to kill animals or else they'll die.
but he eventually decides against it once the fever wears off and he realizes it's all incredibly fucking dumb. Oh, this story's shit. It makes very little sense and parades these rigid, emotionally lost, motivationless characters around. People literally praise it as being great for the subject matter. Being the tragedy of World War I, which of course is a tragedy, you know, nobody's taken away from that. And one scene in the whole game, this scene.
I have stood knee-deep in mud and bone and filled my lungs with mustard gas. I have seen 2 brothers fall. I have lain with holy wars and copulated with the autumnal fallout. I have dug trenches for the refugees. I have murdered dissidents where the ground never thaws and starved the masses into faith. A child's shadow burnt into the brickwork. A house of skulls in the jungle. The innocent Manders trod and bled and gassed and starved and beaten and murdered and enslaved. This is your coming century. They will eat the Manders. They will make pigs of you all, and they will bury their snouts into your ribs, and they will eat your hearts.
This hand on heart is the best moment in the game, very well written and executed and strategically placed, considering it makes people forget the shit they just spent 3 hours trotting through in terms of story. But this is the quality you should be providing throughout the entire game, in moments to make us feel for these characters and understand the grander situation. Comparing this to Dark Descent in the same vein is about a guy who finds an orb and takes it with him everywhere, until he realizes that a shadow is now chasing him and trying to kill him, so a mysterious benefactor assists him, only to reveal very late that he's got his own nefarious desires for the man and the orb, which ends in one or both of them dying based on judging the morality of the characters. You're meant to judge for yourself whether killing Alexander is the right thing to do. This is all you need to make a story in a game so chock full of gameplay. It's more than satisfying, it brings the entire experience together.
Alexander along with Daniel makes up the foundation for the entire story. Together they make the core conflict. There was a lot of background for this character as he is in a sense the villain, so I wanted to do everything that I could to make him likable and have people sympathize with him. It's just the best way to make a bad guy. If we can have the player feel for their opponent, they might start questioning their own actions. Alexander's story is quite interesting in its own right, but in the end it was important to have the story deal with the relationship between Daniel and Alexander. That's why there is so much about the last few weeks and so little about the history of Alexander. Because after all, since we're playing Daniel and he seemed to want to get back at Alexander, we the player want to know how bad it really was and decide for ourselves if we think he should be punished.
But why is it bad? Why? People say the Dark Descent story is bad. It's not amazing, but it's solid, and it's a damn sight better than Pig's mess. There are a few inconsistencies and errors if you really poke, but this story has way less time and manpower behind it. It was just one guy who almost wrote himself into dead ends, yet still found a way to produce the Dark Descent's results.
When I started writing, I had only outlined the framework for the story and the first few levels in the game design document, so I ended up finalizing a lot of material for the first levels, and then when those were done, we planned out the last 2/3 or so. This had a funny effect since I had to not only cater to the story, but to stay true to the stuff I've written for the first levels. Usually you can go back and forth while writing and change things, but if you have already recorded voices, you really shouldn't because of the costs. So the first text really shaped the rest of the material in an interesting way, and made them matter in a way I hadn't thought about.
How much does Mandus even remember? He can't remember destroying the machine, he can't remember the visit to Mexico, the orb, etc. But he remembers his children, like, really specifically. All Daniel really remembered was his name and the basic motor functions, as well as... Well, we don't even know if he remembers language, but we can assume he can read, since, you know, he picks up other things. It's so jarring, you know, when you feel such a split from the main character in a way that gets to the point where you're asking the game what it wants you to feel, what it wants you to know.
First clumsy attempt at sabotage. So how did I get persuaded to do it again? That is the question. How did I get persuaded to fix all this shit I mean, obviously I was going after my children, but I mean, come on, man. You don't remember a ding-dong damn thing!
In summary, the story in both games is creative, yet the ways in which both are told directly affect their impact on the player. Without repeating myself, Machine for Pigs is pathetic. It falls for so many simple cliches while trying to muddy the understanding of what's happened to appear profound and to match the setting it provides, while The Dark Descent gives you a simplistic story that's told clearly and without pretension, as long as you work to find the answers yourself.
Eventually culminating in a grand crescendo whose finale is as satisfying as it is visually spectacular.
Fuck you, Revision 3. Holy hell, this whole thing is going to be really long, so I've gone and split it up into 3 videos. You want to see the next part of this epic? Then click here. You want to see me play some Hearthstone? Then click here. You want to see me screw around with some friends on Draw My Thing? That's oddly specific, but yeah, here's a link for that too. I hope you enjoyed at least to some degree, and I'll see you next time.
They told me tugboat!